Hello, and welcome to this T-Level Tactics video on data sources for Root Core 3 data of the T-Level Digital Support Services course. In this video, we're going to identify sources of data, compare different types of data and how it can be formatted, and we're going to create a simple database to import data into a table. Before we get started, a short disclaimer. T-Level Tactics videos are not endorsed or sponsored by any education institution or qualification awarding body. And these videos should not be used as a replacement to any classroom learning you might be receiving, as the discussion and practical activities with your peers and lecturer will help to expand your thinking and comprehension. Instead, these materials are best used as preparation material or revision to reinforce your learning. These videos also cover the same content and required knowledge for Root Core 3 of the T-Level Digital Business Services course. However, they will be more contextualized towards IT support roles. Let's get started. In the last video, we looked at some ways that data could be collected, and they were mainly manual or perhaps from some sensors or things like that. And they're all perfectly valid for the initial collection of data. But if you work in a data role, you're most likely going to be working with large, raw datasets in an electronic format. This data will have been collected and compiled already and could come from a number of different sources. If you work in a data role in an organization, data could come from internal sources or external sources. Let's take a look at them. Internal sources are from a department within the business or organization. It could be sales data, marketing data, financial data, employee data, customer data, or usage data for various things like website traffic and things like that. You may also work with data provided from external organizations, such as open data sources like earthdata.nasa.gov. It could be government data, like from data.gov.uk. Supplier data, such as products that are available to order for a store or a shop. Competitor data, like stock prices or product price changes. Think of the Tesco Aldi price match comparison thing that's going on in supermarkets at the moment. Could be sector or industry data. Could be looking at the number of staff redundancies, industry-wide, or salaries for job roles across a sector. Could also be market research, such as reviews of existing competing products or services. And there are plenty of datasets that you can access for free to use for yourself. I've mentioned data.gov.uk already, and that has all published data from the UK government on a variety of different subject areas. And there's also Kaggle.com, which has lots of user-submitted datasets available for download, some of them based on very real things they've been able to use APIs and crawl the internet for to compile data, and some are fictional that people have made up to be used as examples. All the datasets shown so far have been obtained from Kaggle. Very useful. Although that's a short look at datasets, if you're a Patreon member, you can have a go at the first task on the task sheet. So download that from patreon.com/tleveltactics and have a go. It's only a short task, about 15 minutes. It's just a little bit on data sources, datasets, and where they can come from. Pause the video here, have a go at that first task, then come back when you're ready to move on to part 2. Data can come in lots of different shapes and sizes when you get them from various data sources. Let's take a look at what it might look like. Now, when you obtain a dataset, it's likely going to be in a raw format. This is often a format such as a CSV, comma separated value, TSV, tab separated value, a JSON, JavaScript object notation file, or an XML for extensible markup language file. Now, all of these are known as flat files and store their data in plain text. And you can open any of these files in any text editor like Notepad or TextEdit on Mac. But each of these file formats is used for different purposes, and they have different features. CSV files are the most widely used and compatible flat file format. Each CSV file holds data for a single table in a database. Column headings, or attributes, are listed in the first row, and you can see that in the example here, where it says first name, last name, education, all separated by commas. Each line below represents an entry or a record, and each field for a record is separated by a comma. CSVs are frequently used to import data from applications to spreadsheets and databases. They're really simple and they're really quick to use and import. TSV files are similar to CSVs, but they just use tab spacing instead of commas to separate values. It's useful for when the data may already contain commas, for example, in an address or a product review, for instance. And data in a TSV can be more readable, but it's still not usable until it's been imported into an application. JSON files look very different. They're a lot more structured than CSV or TSV files. They're often used when data is being transferred or migrated from one database to another. And data in JSON files is presented in pairs. You can see that here, where we've got a name, and we've called that name laptop. It identifies the name for this product. Multiple database tables can be stored in the same JSON file, which makes it a lot more in-depth, a lot more flexible. And in this example, we've got a people table, and we've also got a product table, all in the same file. We couldn't do this in a CSV. We'd have to have two separate CSV files in order to store data for multiple tables. XML files are another structured format, and they are again similar to JSON files. They can be used to represent more complicated data structures and can store multiple tables. And XML files use a hierarchy format to represent tables, records, and attributes. And they use tags to define the start and end of each set of data, meaning that it can look somewhat like HTML if you're familiar with it. Flat files contain all the raw data and headings required to import data into a database straight from the source. They usually don't contain any information on data types, though. They also may not have been cleaned or sanitized in any way, meaning that there may be missing, duplicate, or irrelevant entries in the data, or perhaps values that don't quite fit into the criteria of the required data type. And this is going to be your job to correct when you import the data into your database. Now, for Patreon members, we can do a little bit more investigation work into file formats, so head back to the task sheet and have a go at the second task on there. Again, somewhat short task, it'll take you about 20 minutes, so pause the video here, then come back when you're ready to move on to task 3. So, let's put all of this knowledge to use and have a go at creating a table in a database. In this section of the video, we're going to create a Microsoft Access database and import a simple data file that's saved as a CSV. Microsoft Access is included in Microsoft 365 and available from $5.99 per month. There is a 1-month free trial available, but for Microsoft Access, you must have a Windows-based PC. Now, I'm not sponsored by Microsoft, so I'm going to let you know there are free alternatives available, such as LibreOffice, which has LibreOffice Base. That's available as a free multi-platform alternative. It will use similar steps to what I'm about to show you, but the interface will look different. There is also plenty of other database software out there, but for when you're just starting out and doing this course, Access or LibreOffice Base is going to be more than enough. Now, before you get started, head over to patreon.com/tleveltactics and sign up as either a free member or as a T-Level Tactician to get access to exclusive members' content. Find the free resources post. It's usually pinned to the very top of the page. And then download the sample data adidas.csv file. Once you've got all of that, you're ready to get started. The first thing you should do is open Microsoft Access. Step 1. Once you've opened Access, create a new blank database. You can select New on the left-hand side, and then Blank Database should appear. Step 2. Select somewhere suitable to save your database, and give it an appropriate name, and then click Create. I've called this one Example. You'll see that the file type is an ACCDB, or Access Database. You'll be presented with your database and a blank table. Step 3. In the ribbon at the top, click External Data and click New Data Source. In here, we're going to want to select From File and then select Text File. Now, you can import data from all different kinds of sources in Access, but for now, we'll stick with text files and flat file formats. Step 4. You'll get the following window appear. Click the Browse button and locate the sample data Adidas CSV that you've downloaded from the Patreon. Make sure you click Import the source data into a new table further down in the window. Click OK once you've done this. Step 5. You'll probably see that Access has detected that the file uses a delimiter. Remember that CSV files use commas to separate fields, and that's how a delimiter in this case. Make sure that the delimited radio box is selected and click Next. On the next screen, the data isn't going to look quite right yet, and there are a few settings that we'll need to change here. First of all, make sure comma is selected as the delimiter at the top of the screen. Then change the text qualifier drop-down box to quotation marks. And finally, tick the first row contains field names box. The window should then look like this, and your data should look much better. Click Next. On this next screen, we can assign data types to each column. Based upon the last video on data types, assign each column an appropriate data type. You can change it later if you need to. And beware that some of the data types have different names here. A single data type is the equivalent of a short number, and the double data type is equivalent to a long number. Click the column headings, and then you can change the data type from the drop-down box. When you're ready, click Next. On this screen, select Choose My Own Primary Key, and make sure that SKU is selected in the drop-down box. A primary key exists to uniquely identify each entry in your database. In this case, the SKU is unique for each product, so we can use that. But for other data, there may not be a unique identifier. You might need to add a primary key yourself in this step. Step 9. Give the table with your data a name. It's good practice to start table names with TBL so you can recognize it as a table later on. It's also good practice in databases not to use spaces in names. You can either use camel case to separate the words, or you could use underscores. You can see examples of both in the images to the right. Once you're happy with the name you've given it, click Finish. If you're asked if you'd like to save the import steps, just leave the box unticked for now and click Close. Now, you'll see your new table appear in the list on the left of the screen. Double-click it to open up your table. and you should now see all the data that you've imported. Make sure that you've saved the table and saved your database. Right now, it might feel a lot like a spreadsheet. But in the future, with additional data and tables, you can link tables together and use data across multiple tables to produce complex queries and reports. Now for Patreon members, there's another task all about importing data, so head back to the task sheet and have a go at that. This one might take a little bit longer just because it might be new to you and it's a bit complicated. So spend somewhere between 30 to 45 minutes on it. Pause the video here and have a go, and then once you're done, come back and we'll finish things off. So in this video, we've identified sources of data and kinds of file types that data can come in and how it can be formatted. We've also had a go at creating a simple database and importing data to a table. Let's finish off with 2 exam-style questions. Here's the first. Identify 2 types of flat file formats. And the second, explain the difference between internal and external data sources, and explain what open data is. That one's worth 5 marks. And that brings us to the end. In the next video, we'll take a look at how to store data correctly, securely, and safely. So make sure you're subscribed to youtube.com/@TLevelTactics to be notified when that one comes out. And also, if you haven't yet, do head over to patreon.com/TLevelTactics to see all of the free resources available over there. Get access to our podcast editions that you can listen to on the go and all the other exclusive content that our members get. Thanks for watching and see you next time.